even if my pocket's empty, I don't really wanna go to work. Got up this morning, look around and see the sun high. You know what? It is so sweet under the sun. And even if my pocket's empty, I don't really wanna go to work. It is so sweet under the sun. I'm gonna take my time, 'cause I don't really wanna go to work. Now that I'm singing and dancing, I love it. I'm losing my mind. Oh yeah. It is so sweet under the sun. And even if my pocket's empty, I don't really wanna go to work. It is so sweet under the sun. I'm gonna take my time, 'cause I don't really wanna go to work. Now I'm singing and dancing, I love it. I'm losing my mind. Oh yeah. It is so sweet under the sun. And even if my pocket's empty, I don't really wanna go to work.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Bug of the Month here. My name's Phil Tereyla with Anglers Covey, one of the guides for Anglers Covey. We're out on the Arkansas River here today doing a little bit of shooting and catching a few fish, enjoying this nice early spring weather. What we're going to be talking about more than anything for the Bug of the Month this session is leeches, okay? And while the leeches are Bug of the Month, we're really fishing leeches year round. So even though we're talking about it here in February, it really should be a fly or something that you focus on in your arsenal year round. First and foremost, I guess we're going to talk about kind of leech habitat. Leeches, for the most part, are really just a carnivorous worm. You know, they'll live in all different types of environments. We've found a bunch of them here on the Arkansas River this morning. We'll find them in lakes, whether it be your reservoirs close by, Spinney, 11 Mile, Antero. We've got plenty of leeches in all of our high mountain lakes, our tailwaters close by, the South Platte. Really just about any water environment is capable of holding leeches. Leeches like to live, you know, really kind of everywhere in the river. You know, they'll find some of that substrate or mud, they'll dig in there. They'll definitely be on the bottom of rocks, logs. So leeches are pretty happy just about anywhere. Today we did some seining, you know, found some leeches middle of the current, kind of in some of the eddy water, just kicking stuff up off of rocks and logs and all that stuff. So leeches, you know, wherever you find them, they can vary in color, you know, black, brown, or a rusty color, olive. You know, I've seen some swimming around, they'll almost be burgundy. And they're really just a great food source for trout. They're a little bit bigger. You know, if you can imagine eating a worm, or, you know, if you compare them to a worm, it's just a lot more calories that a fish can take in pretty much any time that they're feeding. You know, if you compare that to eating hundreds of midges versus, you know, one leech, that's why fish will certainly key on them opportunistically. Here in the spring, we've definitely had a bunch of fish eat our leech today. The rainbows haven't quite started spawning yet, and, you know, as they kind of start to spawn on other rivers in Colorado as we move into spring, those fish will definitely look to a bigger food source just to kind of bulk up and prepare for the season to come. You know, so fishing leeches, you know, this month, February, and then through the spring, like I mentioned, through the summer season as well. Runoff is another great time to fish leeches. You know, as that water comes up and it's knocking loose sediment and kind of hitting sections of the river, or making more turbulence on rocks and various river bottoms, where these leeches will get knocked loose and become easy meals. Again, big easy meals for opportunistic trout. So it's a great fly to just use year round. You know, kind of moving into how we fish leeches as well. It's kind of a simple simple mindset, I guess. You don't have, you compare them to midges or blue wings or any of our bug life in any of these rivers that'll go through different stages or hatch stages. You'll have your larvae and your pupa or emergers and then your adults on top. Really, midges are just kind of singular. They're either swimming or just drifting. So the way I like to fish my leeches, typically I fish them on a dead drift. Traditionally, kind of looking back years ago, it used to be just swinging leeches and making them move, which is certainly a great tactic, but I find that dead drifting and just allowing a fish to have that fly or that leech pattern drift right to them rather than making them chase it down is a much better kind of scenario for that fish. They don't have to exert any energy and again get such a big meal. Now, that being said, while I certainly will dead drift my leeches, I always make sure to allow my leech to swing at the end of the drift. Leeches do swim. They will kind of move almost when they're swimming in the water. They move almost like a snake, but kind of introverted, more like this. So allowing those leeches to swing at the end of your drift will kind of once again give that impression that the leech is swimming across the water. So just always be prepared for that leech eat on the swing. And I guess finally here, I really like to use my leech as an attractor pattern. On my nymph rig, rigging it up as a point fly and having a trailing, more hatch specific pattern behind it. While the fish may not be in the mood for a leech that day, just having that bigger food source kind of drift past them can bring attention to your smaller bugs. Just because they're not eating leeches doesn't necessarily mean that they're not on the lookout for them. And just kind of a fish seeing a leech drifting in the water can get them a little bit more excited, I've found, kind of turn them to your smaller midge or blue-winged olive pattern. And again, whether the flows are high or low, I like to throw leeches as my attractor, again, just to kind of bring a presence to my smaller or more hatch-specific pattern. All right, so talking about fly patterns now and kind of good patterns that'll match your leeches here, both in rivers and still waters. Today I knew we were going to be shooting this, so I admittedly tied on a multiple leech rig. Didn't want to give any options to those fish other than just eat leeches, and was actually quite surprised with how many fish ate just the leech, even though there were midges coming off and everything else. So big producer for me today is my light speed leech. It's a kind of a pattern I've developed over the last little bit here. It's got a really trim profile. The material kind of gives it that nice flat tail, but it also kind of comes a little bit more streamlined towards the front, a little bit of flash. It looks very much like what those leeches will look like as they're kind of in between their swimming stroke, I guess you could say, kind of as they shorten back up, but not to their just ball-like where they're resting on the bottom. So it's a really good pattern, just both as a dead drifted leech and also as if it's swung at the end of your drift as well. Moves around in the water really good and gives a really great profile, that quality leech silhouette. And that's a bigger rust one here. I also want to show you a little black one. While some of our leeches are on the bigger side, majority of your leeches in the water are going to be anywhere from just over a ½ inch to up to like 2.5, even 3 inches. So this little black one here tends to work really good for those smaller leeches, and then in low flows as well. It's not quite as intrusive, but still gives that big food source. The next pattern that I've fished for a long time, it's been around forever, is just kind of your basic pine squirrel leech. This fly has been around. It's fished well for me on the South Platte, on the North Platte in Wyoming. It really trims down nice and slick there to where it's very slim, and it undulates in the water very good, very similar to a leech swimming. So that's another one of my great patterns I've used for a long time. Finally, the other pattern that I have always had some great success on is Landon's little mini leech jig. This one is the mini leech jig Radiant. That ostrich hurl serves as a great collar. Kind of looks like the sucking end of one of those big leeches, and then having that bead on there as well is really helpful. It helps get the fly down, and as you jig that around, it gives a great undulating motion of a leech swimming, as well as a little bit of contrast as far as color in the water. So those are really my 3 go-to leech patterns. Again, it's kind of hard to go wrong. A fish is going to eat a leech, it's probably going to eat a leech, you know, regardless of the pattern. But I do try to give my bugs the best look, or the most natural look as possible when it comes to imitating those leeches. And on that note, everybody, so as far as our bug or our leech patterns go, please stay tuned. I'll be tying, I'll be in the shop. We're gonna do a little filming of me tying my signature Lightspeed leech here shortly. So stay tuned for that. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to come into the shop, ask the guys in the shop, ask anybody in there. I'm more than happy to help and try to steer you in the right direction. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and wish you all nothing but the best on the water moving into spring.
He came right at me!